Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. I am your host, Lonnie Jones. My wife Jackie and I moved to the city of Huntsville in 1986 for me to be a youth and family minister. I have been a minister since 1980. I have served in this community as a police chaplain assigned to a SWAT team since 1992, and I've been in private practice as a licensed professional counselor since 1998. I'm also an adventure educator and an avid outdoorsman. I dabble in rock climbing and I goof around with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Our life has been full of many wonderful experiences and some just outright adventures. I used to write about those things in a little church bulletin article. So now instead of asking you to read those things, we're just going to talk about them in our podcast. And as we talk about them, we're going to talk about the facts. The facts lead to concepts, and the concepts lead to application. One caveat about the facts is, for the most part, we're going to tell you the facts just as they happened. But every now and then, we're going to tell you the way other people have told us they remember it happening with a little bit of embellishment. It's all good, clean fun and for educational purposes. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy Keeping Up with Jones. Faulkner University announces a 60% tuition discount for members of the Church of Christ. Now, there are some guidelines. This 60% tuition reduction is applicable to adult undergraduate Bible degrees or graduate Bible degrees from the Curley Graduate School of Theology in the VP Black College of Biblical Studies. You must satisfy all admission requirements and maintain satisfactory academic progress. You must remain continuously enrolled, including summers, until the completion of the degree. You must provide a letter from an elder or minister, preferably on church letterhead, verifying that you're an active member of a Church of Christ congregation prior to your initial enrollment. This offer applies to adult undergraduate degrees such as biblical studies, youth and family ministry tracks, and it also includes graduate degrees. And those are the Master of Arts in Biblical Studies, the Master of Arts in Family Life Ministry, or a Master of Theology, and it also applies to the PhD in Biblical Studies. For undergraduate inquiries, please contact Adult Enrollment, 334-386-7140, 334-386-7140, or Adult Enrollment at Faulkner edu. That is Adult Enrollment at faulkner.edu. For graduate inquiries, please call 334-386-7539, 334-386-7539. Graduate enrollment at faulkner.edu. That is graduate enrollment at faulkner.edu. Faulkner University is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. I spent a lot of time last week watching squirrels. I was deer hunting in Arkansas, and I got to watch a drama play out. There were 7 rather large squirrels, and by large, I don't mean large like fox squirrel. I mean fat. I mean well-fed. I was hunting in a blind on some land that a friend of mine hunts, and when I'm out in Arkansas, he always lets me use his blind when he can't hunt. He's good to tell me, hey, I've got a big deer coming in, or I've got this on camera, and you're welcome to go in there and hunt. And I've sat hours and hours and hours due to the generosity of Darren Sterling and watched animals in the woods while I was in Arkansas. He was generous to put some corn on the ground. This is legal in Arkansas, and sort of trying to incentivize the deer to come by and visit us. I sat Thursday morning, Thursday night, Friday morning, Friday night, and on Friday morning, I saw 11 deer. That's the only time they showed up, nothing with antlers that I wanted to shoot. And so I was content to just watch the wildlife. But the squirrels showed up every single day. And every single day, the squirrels and the crows competed over the corn. The squirrels came in a little group, and they would be eating the corn. And then the crows would float in, and they would prance and jump around and flap their wings and try to intimidate the squirrels. A group of crows is called a murder. My cousin, Jeremy Lett, who's a retired state trooper sniper, posted on Facebook that he had foiled an attempted murder using a 22 long rifle. Now, the picture he posted was of two crows and not a third or a fourth. And he was using his rifles to keep the crows below the murder level. I told him, I said, only 37 people got your joke, but I appreciated your offbeat sense of humor. But this got me thinking about squirrels. If a group of crows is called a murder, what do you call a bunch of squirrels? Is it a pack of squirrels, a herd of squirrels, a posse of squirrels? As it turns out, a bunch of squirrels can be called a dray or a scurry. Now, dray, D-R-A-Y, is a corruption of the word dray, D-R-E-Y, which is what people call a squirrel's nest. So when you see a little squirrel building a nest out of leaves, that's known as a dray. And I really couldn't figure out why it's called that. No one knows why it's called a dray. But a group of squirrels, since they live in a dray, D-R-E-Y, is sometimes called a D-R-A-Y, a dray. But a group of squirrels can also be called a scurry, which I think is much more cute and fits the bearing of the little gray squirrels. Now, the word squirrel is a code word that I've always used. When I refer to someone as a squirrel, I don't mean they're cute, fluffy, or cuddly. When I use the word for a squirrel, I mean that's a person who is unpredictable and unsafe, especially in the ropes course world. You see, my instructors would help me identify the squirrels. We'd get a group of folks out to visit us on the course, and either through noncompliance or no fault of their own, these people just were dangerous. They wouldn't follow simple instructions. They couldn't follow simple instructions. They wouldn't take spotting seriously. And we would identify them early in the day because you got to make a decision after lunch. Hey, who's going to be allowed to climb? Who's going to be allowed to climb without supervision? Who's going to be allowed to climb without direct contact with an instructor? And so rather than just call these people out, rather than just, give them a couple of warnings, hey, you're not paying attention, hey, you're not taking this seriously, but instead of going, okay, so today we're going to do this, this, and this, but you're not going to do it, we would just give the people we call squirrels a red helmet. And so no matter where you were on the course, when it came time to be involved in the high elements, if this person was going to participate and they had a red helmet, somebody had to pay attention to them. If you had a red helmet on, we wanted to know what was going on. And we bought these red helmets for the very specific purpose to be able to identify our squirrels. And it was a code name, and anybody would know at a glance, okay, I've got a group of 15 people and I got two squirrels in the bunch. Well, how did we come up with the idea for the name squirrel? Maybe you think it's because we were climbing in trees. No, a squirrel is simply a person that makes a nut nervous. So now these folks are often unaware of their lack of compliance, but often they just don't want to comply. They're scared or they're nervous, and so they try to put on some bravado, and they don't want to follow the group. And because of that, they get a red helmet. And in our minds, they're labeled as squirrels, and they're not allowed to participate in some of the things where not only could they hurt themselves, but by not paying attention, they could hurt someone else. I remember one particular outstanding squirrel. We had a group from a church in Tennessee, and they were up on the old Kill Mountain course. And sure enough, they had this kid who just wouldn't pay attention. He wouldn't listen to instructions. He wouldn't follow instructions. He would not take the spotting exercises seriously. He wasn't really worried about other people's safety, and he really wasn't worried about his own safety. He was kind of a cavalier kid. He wouldn't pay attention, and on every low element that day, this kid caused some kind of a reset. Hey, this guy's not following the rules. We have to start over. Hey, this kid didn't do what we're supposed to do. We have to start over. So after lunch, we get down to the high course, and this is the old Kill Mountain course where the course was built in these huge trees. And so after lunch, we get down to the high course, and I just didn't allow him to participate in the high elements. You got to climb that tree, and you've got to transfer from your belay rope to the safety cables. And he hadn't paid enough attention all day. I don't believe he could have followed the instructions to make a peanut butter sandwich. And I made a decision. I said, look, I'm not going to let this guy get 40 feet in the air and kill himself. I made a decision, not being punitive or not being vindictive. I tried to keep the kid alive. Now, you got to understand, for me to say, okay, you've driven all this way, you've participated half a day, you've done some of the exercises, but you're not going to do this. That's extreme. In 22 years of facilitating and owning my own course, I made that decision one time, only once. And I made it with this kid. So you got to understand how extreme his behavior was. And it was a unanimous consensus among all the instructors. I said, this is my feeling. This is what I'm thinking. And to the person, it was like, yeah, hey, you don't need to let that guy get off the ground attached to a rope where he can unattach himself. And so the only way to make sure the kid can't unattach himself from a rope is not to attach him to one. And we didn't let him climb. Years later, I was speaking at a church in Tennessee, and this adult came forward. This dad came up to me, and he said, hey, my son almost didn't come today because you're the speaker. And I was like, oh, okay. He must not enjoy my speaking. He must not enjoy my teaching. He said, no. He said, my son didn't want to come today because you're the speaker, because he was on your ropes course and you didn't let him climb. Well, now, I'm used to people not enjoying my presentations. I'm PNG, persona non grata, at several places. And so, I get the idea that, I'm not everybody's cup of tea and people aren't going to ask you to do stuff. But this kid, years later, is holding this grudge against me because of his behavior, not because of mine. And the dad said, look, he's still basically upset at you and doesn't care anything for you. I really wish you'd go talk to him. Well, I didn't really feel like I needed to make amends with this kid, but this adult has asked me, and I'm a guest from out of town. So yeah, I go approach this young group of men or this group of young men. And I said, hey, how you doing? And he met me with coolness and aloofness. He basically said, I don't want to talk to you. I didn't get to participate in your high course, and I blame you. Now, he's blaming me for choices that he made. I didn't make the choice for him not to participate. He made the choice for him not to participate anyway. So I just said, okay, so you're blaming me because I made a decision not to allow you to get into the high elements, continue to disobey the rules of safety, and hurt yourself. He said yes, and he said yes emphatically. I said, so it's my fault that you're standing here today and you didn't get hurt on my ropes course. He said yes. I said, well, then you're welcome. Be that as it may, you have squirrels. And in my language, the squirrels is an unpredictable person that makes the nuts nervous. But you have, in this hunting scenario, you have a scurry of squirrels, and you have the murder of crows, and they entertained me all day. Darren would send me a text that I love to watch the drama play out when the squirrels and the crows try to bully each other. I said, yeah, you couldn't buy a better pay-per-view ticket, especially if you think about the last Netflix with Paul and Tyson. The squirrels and the crows were way more entertaining. So you have the squirrels scurrying around, and they flowed like little gray shadows over the sun-dappled leaves. And then the crows would circle and drop in, and they would hop around with their wings extended, and they would flap their wings and try to bully the squirrels away from the food. And the squirrels would scurry and scamper and dodge the crows, but the crows aren't as agile as the squirrels. So eventually the fast movement of the squirrels would intimidate the crows, and they would fly off. Often one or more of the groups would win a brief exchange, but nobody ever won the day. And so, rarely did you have just squirrels and rarely did you have just crows. It was a scurry murder, if you will. But then the little gray hawk showed up. And to the best of my knowledge, that's what he's called. It's not a sharp-shinned hawk. It's not a rough-legged hawk. It's not a red-tailed hawk. It's not a Cooper's hawk. It's not a goshawk. It's a little gray hawk. Now, I couldn't really find any good information on if are they actually in Arkansas or not. But this is, a diminutive little hawk. He's light gray with speckles, and he didn't dive at the corn pile, and he wasn't up hovering in the air ominously like you see, an eagle or a falcon do. He just landed on a limb about 15 feet away. And he flew in and he landed, and then the limb was maybe, 5, 6 feet off the ground. He perched on this limb, and it looked like you'd set a squirrel bomb off. Squirrels scurried in every direction. They bounded over logs. They ran up trees. And turned upside down and wagged their tails and barked and announced the presence of, hey, we've got a predator in the woods. And they alarmed everything that was within earshot when this little hawk showed up. And then that got my mind to wondering, the crows are actually larger than this little hawk. And the ones that weren't large, or at least comparable to him in size, they floated in from above. They came in with their wings spread, like a raptor does when he soars. And yet the squirrels, by and large, didn't really pay them any attention. Now, there was some occasional territorial disputes when somebody wanted this kernel of corn and somebody else, and the crow wanted it or the squirrel wanted it. But for the most part, the squirrels weren't intimidated by the crows. How does a squirrel know not to be afraid of a crow, but to be afraid of a hawk? To my knowledge, most animals are colorblind. So how do you tell the difference between a hawk and a crow? Do you go to a little squirrel scurry school and you get a silhouette chart? If you see this is dangerous and this is not. I mean, you'd think that if death comes from above, then it didn't matter what came in from above, a squirrel would run away from it. Now, a crow will eat a squirrel, but the squirrel already has to be dead. You get a roadkill squirrel, or you get a squirrel that dies of natural causes, and a crow finds it, he'll eat it. But crows don't kill squirrels. But how did the squirrels know that crows who travel in a murder won't actually kill you? Why aren't squirrels afraid of all flying things? I mean, they're paranoid, jumpy little guys anyway. You get one on the ground and you try to shoot him with a bow and arrow, and it's almost impossible to shoot. And I've killed a few with a bow and arrow shot, but they almost can sense an arrow coming in from above and dodge it. And I kill a few squirrels every year, either with my bow or with my pistol, but they're constantly moving and twitching and looking up. They have this uncanny ability, almost it's like that they can feel when you're sighting in on them. And even though they're paranoid about me being up in a tree above them, they rarely run in panic when they recognize that I'm not part of the tree. But even though death for them often comes from above, a pouncing bobcat or some kind of a hawk, they basically ignore crows. Somehow the scurry crowd knows that the murder crowd won't hurt them or hunt them. But they also know that a hawk, and even the small hawks, will kill you. A male hawk, by the way, is called a tercel, and it's a corruption of a word that means a third, because a male hawk is roughly 1/3 the size of a female hawk. And a tercel is a specific term for a large falcon, but a male hawk is referred to as a tercel because of his diminutive size when compared to the female. And the squirrels know that a hawk of any size will kill you, but they're not afraid of a crow of any size. I wonder why they don't make the generalization error that people do. You see, as humans, we tend to generalize and we treat that which is similar as the same. All snakes are venomous. All snakes are dangerous. All snakes are deadly. People who are afraid of dogs are afraid of all dogs. The same is true of people who are afraid of bees and flying insects. If you're afraid of bees, every flying insect is a bee. Okay? We generalize and we come to the conclusion based on one thing, one experience, one animal, one person, or one circumstance. And because this hurt me, because they disappointed me, because they let me down, then all of them are deadly, evil, mean, or dangerous. We shouldn't do that, yet we do. We judge all on some. We prejudge an entire community based on just the similarities that they have with people in the same community. And we tend to generalize bad evaluations based on similarities rather than taking the time and using discernment to discover the differences. All churches aren't the same. All religious people aren't the same. All people from a specific denomination aren't all alike. All cops aren't the same. All preachers aren't the same. All politicians aren't the same. All men aren't the same. All women aren't the same. All people from this race or this country or this religion aren't the same. And it takes patience, it takes experience, and it takes open-mindedness to be willing to be brave enough to learn the difference. Yet we tend to take the similarities and we generalize and then we villainize because of some isolated bad experiences, perceptions, or beliefs. Just because it's big, just because it has wings and claws and a beak, doesn't mean you have to be afraid of it. and even a squirrel figured that out. Using the tool of shortwave radio, World Christian Broadcasting literally covers the world every day with the gospel. They use 2 large curtain antennas. One is located in Anchor Point, Alaska, and the other in Madagascar. They send out messages that are recorded at their international home in Franklin, Tennessee. They make available 40 hours of broadcast every day. The broadcasts are made in English, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, English for Africa, and Arabic. They would love for your group to visit them. You can bring your ladies group, your youth group, or your men's group. Just give them a call at 615-371-8707, 615-371-8707, or you can go to worldchristian.org, find the Donate Here button, and make a financial contribution to support this work that literally covers the world every day with the gospel. World Christian Broadcasting, in cooperation with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. TKM Incorporated in Moss, Tennessee is a construction company that specializes in erosion control, seeding, and soil, hydroseeding, hydromulch, minor excavation, and silt fence. They also provide traffic control and construction signs. Their business is keeping people safe, but their passion, their mission, is they wish that all men could be saved. TKM has adopted the nickname the King's Men because as they serve you, they also serve the King. If they could provide any of their services for you, please contact them at 931-243-3958. That is 931-243-3958. Or you can contact them on the net at tkminc2001 at twlakes.net. That is tkminc2001 at twlakes.net. TKM Incorporated is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure.